Well, natural family planning, for those who aren't familiar, a woman's body is already perfectly made. And she can only get pregnant a certain number of days of the month. And so if a husband and wife can't afford to have kids for whatever just reason, they can abstain from sex on those days and plan their family that way. It's more than 99% effective, and this is according to the British Medical Journal. But some people just don't want to do it because, wait a minute, that's sacrifice. I wouldn't want to have to say no to my sexual desires. But what ends up happening is contraception, according to many wives out there, has made them kind of to feel like you always have to be ready. You have to be on. You've got to be totally, constantly sexually available because you can't give me this excuse you're afraid of getting pregnant. And so a lot of wives feel like, man, there's no space in this. I always feel like we have to be sexually intimate whenever he wants it, and sometimes they end up feeling used. Now, with natural family planning, what it means is that the person is not always sexually available. And so it makes you not take each other for granted quite so much. And what it taught me as a husband is my wife's body is perfect. She doesn't need drugs, she doesn't need pills, she doesn't need shots, she doesn't need plastic. You know what she needs is to be understood. And if we can understand her fertility, then instead of suppressing it with synthetic sex hormones to make her sexually available to me, instead of suppressing the way her body's made, we control the way our bodies act in order to conform to the perfect way her body's been created. And to me, this is authentic sexual liberation. The woman's body's perfectly made. Let's rejoice in this instead of sterilizing her with these synthetic chemicals to make her sexually available. Because I don't want that stuff in my wife's body. Birth control pills increase your risk of getting breast cancer. Birth control is an abortifacient drug, meaning one of the ways it works is to alter the inside of a woman's uterus, so if she does get pregnant, the baby can't attach in the womb, and he's aborted when he's about a week old before she even knew that she was pregnant. Women don't know this stuff, and they're being told, no, for women's rights, you should take the pill, you should take the shot, you should take this or that. Women don't have a clue. Like when the birth control pill was invented, the guy who invented it realized that women who went on the pill never had a period. And he thought, well, they're not really going to like this because it just is unnatural. Because what the pill is it's synthetic pregnancy hormones. So she takes the pill, goes into her digestive tract, absorbs, enters the bloodstream. The pregnancy hormones go into her brain, and they tell her pituitary brain, you're pregnant. And so that sends a signal to her ovaries to suppress her ovulation because she thinks she's pregnant. Now, the guy who invented this realized that, well, women aren't having a period because their brain thinks they're pregnant. So what we'll do is we'll give her about 3 weeks of synthetic pregnancy hormones. Then, at the end of that cycle of pills, we'll give her blank placebo or sugar pills, and her brain will think she's having a miscarriage. So she'll bleed for 5 or 6 days or whatever, and then she's going to start her next cycle of pills, and then boom, she's pregnant again. So a woman on the pill literally thinks she's pregnant 12 times a year, followed by 12 miscarriages a year. Physiologically, hormonally, this is what's going on in the women's body. What percentage of women on the birth control pill do you think were actually told this from their gynecologist? Less than 1%. Women don't have a clue. Oh, I take this, I don't get pregnant. Great, can ask for more. But when a woman goes on the pill, she experiences more than 150 physiological changes in her body from head to toe. I mean, her eyeballs change. That dehydrates her eye and steepens her cornea, which is why many women on contact lenses complain they become more uncomfortable after going on the pill. One journal said that women on the pill blink 32% more often than girls not on the pill. I mentioned that at an assembly, and some girls were like, hey, look, that girl's on the pill. And she's like, no, I'm not. Stop it, guys. But the thing is, like, why? Why do we need all this stuff? The birth control wasn't invented so you wouldn't get pregnant. We already had something that was 100% effective. It was called abstinence. But people didn't want to have self-control, but they wanted women to become sexually available. So since the dawn of time, people have been tinkering with the woman's body. Birth control isn't 50 years old. It's more than 4,000 years old. We've got ancient Egyptian papyrus talking about how women would have crocodile dung inserted into their body so they wouldn't get pregnant. They would fumigate their uterus with smoke so they wouldn't get pregnant. They would, in the Middle Ages, women would wear amulets that would superstitiously ward off pregnancy. Amulets that would contain the liver of a cat or the earwax of a mule. Now, personally, I think that would be pretty effective because I don't know what guy's going to want to get next to you wearing like cat earwax on your neck or whatever. But like, as the ages went on, they gave women oral contraceptives in the Middle Ages that would contain things like lead, mercury, arsenic, and strychnine that women would swallow. In the 1930s, they recommended women use Lysol and homemade house cleaners to insert into their bodies. Athletes' foot medicine inserted into the women's bodies. And so come the 50s and the 60s, they started coming out with pills and shots and things like that. But it's a lot of the same old chemicals putting into the woman's body when it's like, wait a minute. Isn't she perfectly made? Why can't I just practice self-control for a couple of days out of the month so she doesn't need all this junk in her body? And isn't that an expression of love? And so I think if young people could just see the wisdom of the church's teachings on this, the church wouldn't lose all credibility, the church would gain all credibility. Because the church is looking at this from the lens of 2,000 years of wisdom being guided by the Holy Spirit. And for people to say, oh, it's just a bunch of celibate guys in Rome, what could they know about marriage? I mean, we are at a great poverty if this is our mentality, that we have nothing to gain from 2,000 years of saints. Maybe there's some wisdom we haven't tapped into. And we live in such a horribly contraceptive culture as well that, oh, you're having another kid? Well, you're done, right? I mean, that's two. You got your girl. And we got that. I'm like, yeah, I've had my girl now. I can stop procreating. We've collected all the genders. I mean, what are you talking about? Children are the supreme gift of marriage, and that's what we need to get back to. Not just using NFP instead of contraception, but an openness to life. That's the default. And then if we have to not have kids for a while, then we can resort to NFP. But the default position is that these children are the supreme gift of marriage. Yeah, some people think, well, I mean, what's the difference? I mean, you're not having a kid either way, so what difference does it make? And what we've got to understand is for an act to be moral or immoral, you have to look at the intention and at the action. Because I could say, well, my intention is to feed homeless people, so I'm going to rob a bank and get that money. Okay, well, you got a good intention, but you've got the wrong means to go about it. And so an easy comparison between contraception and birth control could, let's say there's a woman who wants to have a slim figure, and one of them chooses to exercise and practice temperance and abstinence from fatty foods, and she maintains a slim figure. The other woman also wants to remain thin, but instead she practices bulimia, where she's binging on food and purging out the effects. Both of them have the same end in mind, but they take a different route to get there. And so one is practicing temperance and the other gluttony. And it's the same thing with NFP and contraception, where you have one person binging on the sexual act, then purging out its life-giving effects, and the other person practicing some temperance and then only engaging at a time of the month when they know they can't get pregnant. And we need to understand the church is not saying you need to have as many children as physically possible, and the only time you can come together is when she's fertile. This has never been the church's teachings. The church's teaching is just basically the idea that if you are coming together to be one flesh, that you renew your wedding vows in your body. That vow that I've given myself to you freely, totally, faithfully, and fruitfully, and we shouldn't deny any of those parts of the marital act by sterilizing it. Because the natural end of marriage is procreation and union. That's just how it's supposed to be. And we've got to act against sex if we want to split that up, and that's just not the way God designed. And women can perceive this very easily if we flip the coin, where if you had a guy that said to you, look, I want to make love to you, but I just want to have for procreation. I don't want to have any emotional entanglement and getting all Twitter-pated with you. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use you for procreation. I'm going to put a pillowcase over your head so I don't have to actually look at you during the act, because then we might feel some bond. I just want the babies, but not the bonding. You'd realize that guy's a freak. You know, that guy's got some serious issues, that he sees me as some incubator, but he doesn't want any emotional attachment. Contraception is simply the flip side of the coin, where they're saying, I just want the emotional, but I don't want your uterus. I love everything about you except your fertility. And so we're going to block that part of you, but then accept the rest of you. Is it a total gift of the person or not? And so again, the church isn't saying you need to have as many children as possible, but when then you do become one flesh, that your body speaks the truth.